because they were found out to not have given women equal wages.
No,
then
because they paid bin men more than they paid cooks.
But then you can see Ben's point that if they had someone who was looking appropriately in equality and diversity and the actual practical policy implications of what they were doing, then maybe you wouldn't have this situation. You wouldn't have this legal liability. That's what Ben is saying. This is a multi-million pounds organization. Like, it needs to have someone looking seriously and taking responsibility for these decisions.
The People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Tuesday, the 4th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. So, Nigel Farage has taken control of Reform UK and announced his return to run for Parliament in the Essex constituency of Clacton. He's outlined the voters he's targeting.
But perhaps above all, what we're appealing to are those who intend not to vote, because they don't believe there's anybody within the Westminster establishment that actually stands up for them.
And it's going to be all about immigration. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is now promising to introduce an annual cap on the number of work and family visas issued by the UK each year.
Meanwhile, Labour refuses to set specific targets to cut net migration, but they pledge to make significant difference to the numbers, whatever that means. Can any party tackle this issue correctly?
And tonight, Sir Keir Starmer and the PM go head-to-head in their first TV debate of the election campaign. We'll be looking at that.
And Stormy speaks out. The former porn star Stormy Daniels has urged Melania Trump to leave her husband and claimed that Donald Trump should be used as a punching bag at a women's shelter following his felony conviction. That's nice.
And we're going to be in Portsmouth. There'll be some lovely scenes as the boats and ships set sail for the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. Mark White's there, and of course this will be a very special D-Day for the 100 or so veterans left from D-Day.
That's right. gbnews.com/your say is the email address to get in touch with us this morning. First, though, here's Aaron Armstrong with your very latest headlines.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Conservatives say they'll introduce an annual cap on the number of migrant visas allowed for people coming to the UK. The cap on those coming here to work or join family would be based on a recommendation by the Migration Advisory Committee and would be voted on by MPs. The Conservatives claim it will ensure immigration would fall each year over the next Parliament. Labour have called the Tory plan meaningless. Net migration levels are now 3 times higher than they were in 2019. The Labour leader says his party would close the door on President Putin by reducing Britain's reliance on energy from overseas. Sir Keir Starmer will announce his plan to set up a publicly owned green power company later on a visit to the northwest. He says GB Energy, which will be based in Scotland, will help protect the UK from spikes in fuel prices like those that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Liberal Democrats are pledging free personal care for adults in need, including the elderly and disabled. Sir Ed Davey says he wants to pay carers an extra £2 an hour above the national living wage, and he says investment in the care sector would ultimately benefit the NHS. The party leader, himself a carer for his disabled son, has described the issue as deeply personal. He will outline his party's belief that provision of care should be based on need rather than the ability to pay. A ferry carrying D-Day veterans to France for the 80th anniversary commemorations has set sail from Portsmouth. The Mont Saint-Michel is being accompanied by a Royal Navy patrol vessel, a trumpeter, Medusa and Basher, 3 of them, as well as the minehunter HMS Catastock and a training ship Royalist, plus a tugboat as it travels out of Portsmouth Harbour. Quite a flotilla. As part of the DJ commemorations in Normandy, US troops have been out on a replica landing craft at Omaha Beach this morning. Omaha Beach was one of 2 beaches taken by US forces 80 years ago. Well, much more on that to come as we go through the day. And you can keep up to date with all of our stories by scanning the QR code on your screen. That's for GB News Alerts. Our website has the details too. Andrew Bev now with more on all the day's news.
Good morning. It's 9:35. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearson, Bev Turner.
Well, where to start? Do we start with a huge poll giving Labour the biggest victory since 1997, potentially since 1906, or with Nigel Farage's U-turn saying that he is going to run for Parliament to become Reform's MP in Clacton, and of course he's taken over as leader from Richard Tice.
We were obviously on air yesterday morning, and hopefully you were with us then, and we were speculating as to what Nigel might be announcing at 4 o'clock. So let's have a quick look.
So the really big message here is what I'm really calling for, and what I intend to lead, is a political revolt. Yes, a revolt. A turning of our backs on the political status quo. It doesn't work. Nothing in this country works anymore. The health service doesn't work. The roads don't work. None of our public services are up to scratch. We are in decline. This will only be turned around with boldness.
So Labour's campaign coordinator Pat McFadden spoke to GB News earlier, and he didn't seem too fazed.
Our reaction was just get on with the job, keep going. It's an election. Anyone's entitled to stand. Anyone's entitled to be a candidate if they put themselves forward. It makes no difference to us. We're just going to keep on. Our focus is on the voters that we need to win in all these battleground seats. That's been our focus in recent years. We're offering them a changed Labour Party. We think we've got a good programme to turn the page on the Conservative years, and that's what we're going to keep talking about between now and polling day.
So Nigel Farage has sort of spun into this election campaign like a bowling ball into the skittles, hasn't he? And we're all kind of considering what the implications of this might be. He
will be going later to Clacton in Essex. That's the constituency. He's taken on quite a battle because the Conservative Party is defending a majority of around 25,000, and he's got form for not winning. He's lost 7 times before. Is he going to make it 8th? Well, let's talk to somebody who knows all about fighting general election campaigns. Lord Howard. As Michael Howard, he led the Conservative Party in the 2005 election campaign, and it was one of their better results. Lord Howard, good morning to you.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. I suspect, Lord Howard, you're rather relieved you're not leading the Conservative Party into the July the 4th election, because I fear the result is going to be considerably worse than the one you experienced back in 2005.
Well, we don't know, do we, Andrew? The result depends on your viewers and the other voters, and no election is over until the votes are cast and counted. So I believe there's everything to play for. I think we need to focus people's minds on who they want as Prime Minister, on the issues, on the policies, and if we can succeed in doing that between now and July the 4th, then who knows what the outcome might be.
Well, even before Farage entered the race, and your former cabinet colleague, Ken Clarke, once described Nigel Farage as the most talented politician of his generation, Lord Howard. Even before Nigel Farage entered the race, you were looking at polls suggesting the biggest Labour win since before 1997. So it was Everest even before Farage entered the race.
Well, Andrew, you've been around a long time, as have I. We know that polls come and go. An election should not be about the polls. They should be about the personalities of the leaders, who is likely to be our best Prime Minister, and the policies that they're putting forward. And that's what we ought to be talking about.
Of course, when Nigel Farage comes into the scene, Michael, it's what everybody starts talking about. He's on the front pages of all the papers today. It's a massive reverberations. The impact that he had of Brexit, of course, has been significant. He was the architect of the biggest political change in any of our living memory. So what impact will he now have? Because there will be people, I think, from the left and the right that will vote for Nigel.
Well, what those people need to keep at the forefront of their minds is this. A vote for reform is a vote to put Keir Starmer into Downing Street. That is the simple fact. And Labour's policies, Keir Starmer's policies, are the absolute opposite of reforms and of Nigel Farage's. So that's what people need to think about. What is likely to be the result of their vote? What is likely to be its effect on the outcome? And if they don't want Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister, and there's every reason not to want Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister, they have to vote Conservative.
Lord Howard, if you read the letters page of the Daily Telegraph, and I know you read the Daily Telegraph today, you will see a number of people who traditionally voted Conservative saying they will vote reform because the Tory party needs to be punished because it has not followed a proper Tory agenda for years, and they think a substantial defeat will be a major wake-up call for the Tories, and they then may coalesce around a Tory leader who espouses their values and traditions. Do you not have some sympathy with that view?
Well, we've got time to persuade those people to change their minds and to persuade them that they need to vote Conservative. Look, we have been through terrible crises which were much, much more serious than anything we had to do when I was in government all those years ago. We've had the pandemic. We've had the war in Ukraine. Rishi Sunak, as Chancellor and as Prime Minister, has steered us through those crises so that now we're in a position where inflation has fallen, where we have the fastest growth rate of the G7, when we are on course to recover and to continue to grow. And what we must avoid is a Labour government which would absolutely ruin all that. Vote for reform, you get a Labour government, all that will be ruined.
You could be talking about 97 because you were part of that cabinet which handed over a booming economy. The economy was booming in 97, Lord Howard, and yet Tony Blair went on to win a massive landslide because people were fed up to the back teeth of the Tories. They've been in power for 18 years. They've now been in power for 14 years. They change leaders more times than some people appear to change their shoes, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? Been in the power for too long, people want to change.
Well, there was an election in 1992 when we'd been in power for 13 years, much more close to the 14 years of today than the 18 years of 1997. And all the polls were against us in 1992. But in fact, John Major turned it round and we won that election in 1992 against all the odds. So who knows? We don't know until the votes are cast and counted on July the 4th.
I have to say, you win the award for the most optimistic person that we've had on the channel recently, and believe me, there's been quite a long queue of them.
It's not often I get awards. I'm very grateful.
But the question that keeps coming up to my mind is about the leader of the Conservative Party as well, Rishi Sunak, how he managed to find himself in that role as it was and how he repeatedly polls very low in terms of his personal popularity. Could this have been a different story had you a different leader at this point?
No, I think Rishi Sunak deserves great credit for what he's achieved. As I've said, as Chancellor and Prime Minister, he steered us through these terrible crises so that we're now on a path where we can see our economy growing. We can see all of our countries sharing in the benefits as inflation comes down and as the economy starts to grow again. And this is all at risk from a Labour Prime Minister who, as Jeremy Hunt so memorably said last week, if he can't deal with Diane Abbott, how on earth can you expect him to deal with Vladimir Putin?
There's a lot of speculation today, Lord Howard, that he might announce a tougher stance on the European Convention on Human Rights. We know the human rights lobby have stopped flights to Rwanda. Will that be a little too late now in the game? Won't Nigel Farage just mock that and say he should have done it a long time ago?
Well, I'm not privy to that information, Andrew, as you seem to be. I don't know what's going to be announced later today. I do know that we alone, as Conservatives, have a plan to do with illegal immigration by sending people to Rwanda and a plan to deal with legal migration by the annual cap which the party has put forward today. So we are actually the only party putting forward practical proposals which will deal with immigration, which will bring immigration down. That's one of the many reasons why people should vote for us on July the 4th.
We've got the leaders' debate tonight, Michael Howard, this evening, the first time that Sunak and Starmer will have gone head-to-head in the public eye. Who will come out on top of that, do you think? And what might the audience be looking for?
Well, I expect Rishi Sunak to come out on top of that. And I think the audience should be looking at which of these two men do we really want as our Prime Minister after July the 4th. To my mind, there's no contest. We'll see tonight.
Can I just ask you one final thing? In the 97 general election campaign, I used to go to the daily press conference at Tory HQ, and Michael Heseltine, who was then the Deputy Prime Minister, was asked each day, Mr Heseltine, what's your prediction for the Tory majority? And you say, oh, well, it's rising every day, rising every day. Maybe I could ask you, Lord Howard, to reprise the Michael Heseltine Act and say, what's the Tory majority going to be? Is it rising?
Let's wait till July the 4th and then we'll see.
Very good answer. Always good to talk to you. That's Michael Howard, Lord Howard, who was Tory leader.
Thank you very much.
Great to talk to you. Well, he's robust,
That's
isn't he?
a triumph of optimism over reality right there, isn't it?
And the point is, look, they got whacked in '97 when the economy was booming. There was no Reform Party standing. They won in '92 against the odds because Kinnock was an idiot, frankly. He was not a great leader. And but again, there was no Reform Party standing.
Yeah.
That's making the difference.
We need to tell you who else is standing in Clacton, of course, because we have told you that Nigel is there and there are restrictions around this kind of thing at the moment. So the full list is Yovan Owusu-Nepal for the Labour Party, Giles Watling for the Conservative Party,
Matthew Ben Sillam, Liberal Democrats, Nigel Reform UK, Natasha Osborne, Green Party.
So the list of candidates isn't quite finalised. The deadline isn't until later this week. It will be very interesting to see who else goes up. There's no way is that going to be the final list. There's going to be dozens of people now wanting to stand, even as independents.
I want to know if the monster raving loony party are going to put somebody up, because I wrote about this in my column this week. They are looking for candidates. You may have to have a plastic duck, though, on your ballot paper.
Right.
Very important, apparently.
OK, well, we will get that final list at Clacton once it is released this week. And GB News has extended an interview invitation to all of those candidates. Up next, Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer, they go head-to-head tonight in their first TV debate of the campaign. We're going to be joined by a top political presentation coach who'll give his tips. He may have even advised one or two of the people taking part in some of the debates this week. You're on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course.
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what.
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:50 now. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head tonight in the first TV debate of the election campaign.
Well, let's talk to political presentation coach Graham Davis, who's coached many cabinet ministers, former cabinet in your time. He could, if he'd wanted to, Keir Starmer, say, to hell with this, I ain't turning up. The polls are showing him 25 points ahead. That's before the Nigel Farage is factored in. It's his to lose, isn't it?
It very much is. He's got everything to lose in a debate, whereas Rishi Sunak is desperately trying to gain everything. The problem, though, for Sunak is that TV debates very rarely offer the chance to hit a knockout blow. There might be some decent point scoring, but it's most likely to end up as a grubby no-score draw.
What does Sunak have to do to try and get even a 2-1 win?
Well, I think he's got to do a couple of things. Actually, 3 things. Number one, he's got to change his attitude from being tetchy and annoyed when he's asked a difficult question to being more positive, a sort of, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough, but without going so far that he's actually interrupting Keir Starmer, because he tried that with Liz Truss in the TV debates. Really backfired a lot. So he's got to be assertive without being rude. That's number one. Secondly, I would advise him that, of course, you can't come out with spontaneous new policy ideas in a TV debate, but he does have to find some new phrases, some new words to describe the old ones. I don't think anybody's going to be persuaded by him trotting back to, I'm concerned with delivering for the British people yet again.
I've got a plan.
I've got a plan.
I know, so boring.
I'm going to keep trotting it out.
And there is a fourth thing, which would be interesting for both of them, actually. Ideally, depending on the format of the debate and the attitude of the moderator, Sunak should try and find a way of directly facing Starmer and asking him genuinely difficult questions. I don't mean the PMQ's pantomime questioning, but to actually try cross-examining the KC. But, of course, Starmer would be advised to try doing that himself to see whether he can pick holes. Now, I don't think either party is very keen on that approach because they both know that intensive cross-examination is dangerous for them. And also, I suspect the moderator might not allow it, but that would turn this into the Wild West.
It's fascinating interviewing people involved in politics at a time like this because they are so almost brainwashed, like Michael Howard, the wonderful Lord Howard, who I have huge admiration for. But it's almost that sort of need to toe the party line means, Graham, that they often look like they are no longer human. And how tonight do these two party leaders get across a warmth, a humanity, whilst also ticking all the boxes that the party need them to do?
The House of Commons has to be a sort of Dunning-Kruger theme park. If you haven't got 1,000% self-belief, you shouldn't be there. And if you haven't got 92% belief in party policies, you probably shouldn't be there. And that's why sometimes a party or the politicians in that party, when they're desperately behind, in desperate trouble, sometimes come across as Scientologists. But it's the only way to be.
I think that's rather defamatory to Scientologists.
But, I mean, they have to trot out the line, don't they? I mean, Michael Howard's been put up by the Tories. He's a dependable, safe pair of hands.
Well, yes, but although it's trotting out the line, and one might say in the comfort of a TV studio, it's boring, it's the line, it's never going to change anything, you do have to remember the Tory party is indeed the most successful political party in history.
In history, yeah.
And it never really completely goes away. In many ways, it's like a virus that keeps popping up. And so you've got to be able to encourage
Graham,
that virus.
Thank you, Graham. Unfortunately, we have to go away here.
Talking of that virus.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be a fairly blustery day across northwestern areas, some more sunshine to come for these areas, but this morning the best of the sunshine is across the far southeast. Now it will cloud over here later on in the day, but it's still fairly mild out there. Elsewhere, further north and west, it's turning much colder through the day. That's as this band of cloud and rain moves away from the northwest, sinking into parts of Wales, northern England, into central parts by the middle of this afternoon as well. We could see some heavy bursts of rain in here. Now to the north of here, we've got colder air, but some sunshine and some blustery showers moving in by this afternoon. Highs of around 14 or 15 degrees in the north, closer to 20 degrees in the south and east. Now through the rest of the afternoon, that band of cloud and rain will continue to sink southwards, so it will be a fairly bright end to the day across eastern areas of Scotland, but across the northwest, that's where we've got these most frequent showers, and you can see there is some evidence of snow falling over the high ground. That's above around 800 metres in Scotland. It'll be a fairly dry end of the day across northwestern England, parts of North Wales as well, but across central parts of England and southern areas of England as well, a pretty cloudy and possibly quite a damp end to the day. Now that cloud and rain will continue its journey south and eastwards throughout tonight, so it will turn much clearer once that cloud and rain pushes away to the south and east, but it is going to turn much colder through this evening, as behind that cloud and rain we are into much colder air. So temperatures will widely dip down into the lower single figures, rurally into the mid-single figures for many towns and cities. But it will be a fairly bright start to the day on Wednesday, particularly if you are further south and east. Actually towards the north and west, it's going to be another blustery day with frequent, possibly heavy, possibly thundery showers. And again, there's a risk of some snow falling through Wednesday morning over the high ground of Scotland, above around 600 metres, which is fairly unusual for the time of year. And it's going to be a fresher day wherever you are, with temperatures struggling to get into the high teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the outside lanes closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 23 and 22 between Huddersfield and Rishworth Moor. There are queues from junction 25 at Brighouse. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, two lanes are closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 12 and 11 from the Eccles interchange to Birchwood, and it's sloped towards there. On the M6 in Cheshire, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 18 and 19 from the Middlewich and Holmes Chapel turn to Knutsford. It's just the outside lane that's open, with queues from just after junction 17. Sandbatch, that delays of up to an hour, with some cancelled trains on the West Coast main line into and out of Euston Station in London because of overhead line problems. And also in London, the North Circular's closed northbound onto the A40 at Hanger Lane after a lorry overturned, with long delays on approaches to there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, he's taken control of Reform UK and he's planning to run for Parliament in the Essex constituency of Clapton. We're going to hear from him later today on GB News when he arrives in that constituency.
And the immigration battle will continue now. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak promises to introduce an annual cap on the number of work and family visas issued by the UK every year.
While Labour refuses to set specific targets to cut net migration, but they pledge to make significant differences to the numbers. But can any party do it?
And Sir Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister will go head-to-head this evening in the first TV debate of the election campaign. I bet you can't wait.
Record low writing levels. A charity warns daily writing levels for children and young people have dropped to an all-time low. We're going to talk about why that's happened.
And as we approach the 80th anniversary of D-Day, we'll bring you a brilliant report looking at the code breakers behind the scenes who were crucial to the success of the mission. That kid's not using a pen.
Well, because they're always on a computer, isn't that right? Or on their phone or their laptop.
And it begs the question, do they need to be able to write with a pen? Will they ever need to?
How do they send their thank you letters for their Christmas and birthday
Send a
presents?
WhatsApp or a quick text. I'm
Not the same.
afraid that's
Not
how it
the
works.
same.
Or a video to Grandma.
No.
Thank you, Grandma, for
No.
the Christmas money.
Basildon
been
Bomb
lost.
writing paper, remember that?
I love it. Listen, you see, I have a pen in my hand all the time. I'm always writing. I think we learned something as well, like the connection between our brain and our pen. I think things go into our brains more easily with a pen. Anyway, what do you think? Type it to us, gbnews.com/your say. You could write me a letter, but we won't get it for maybe a week or so. First, though, the very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Conservatives have announced a plan to reduce the amount of migrant visas handed out each year. The cap on those coming to the UK to work or join family would be based on a recommendation by the Migration Advisory Committee and would be voted on by MPs. Net migration levels, that's the difference between people leaving and arriving in the UK each year, are now 3 times higher than they were in 2019. Labour have called the Tory plan meaningless, but Home Secretary James Cleverly says it will balance the benefits and the cost of migration.
So the last couple of years, the figures have been much too high, including on legal immigration. And there are some people that like that large volume of legal migration for work purposes. But what we're doing now is we're saying in the future, we will balance both the benefits of immigration, of course there are benefits, but also the cost of immigration.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader says his party would close the door on President Putin by reducing Britain's reliance on energy from overseas. Sir Keir Starmer will announce his plans to set up a publicly owned green power company during a visit to the northwest. He says GB Energy, which will be based in Scotland, will help protect the UK from spikes in fuel prices, like those that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Labour's national campaign coordinator, Pat McFadden, told GB News it will insulate Britain from global fluctuations.
When we're vulnerable to global oil and gas markets, it can be very expensive for individual households, and everybody watching knows what's happened to their energy bills in recent years. But secondly, it's a vulnerability for the country. We can't just think about energy policy as energy policy anymore. It's got to be thought about as part of our national security. So this drive for homegrown renewable power will be cheaper for people in the long run, because renewable power is now cheaper than oil and gas.
The Liberal Democrats are promising free personal care for adults in need, including the elderly and the disabled. Sir Ed Davey says he wants to pay carers an extra £2 an hour above the national living wage. An investment in the care sector would ultimately benefit the NHS. Now, the party leader, who's a carer for his disabled son, described the issue as deeply personal. He'll outline his party's belief that provision of care should be based on need rather than the ability to pay. A ferry carrying D-Day veterans to France for the 80th anniversary commemorations has set sail from Portsmouth. The Mont Saint-Michel is being accompanied by Royal Navy patrol vessels, Trumpeter, Medusa and Basher, as well as the mine hunter HMS Catastock and the training ship Royalist, plus a tugboat as it travels out of Portsmouth Harbour. Now, US troops have been on a replica landing craft at Omaha Beach this morning. It's part of the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. Omaha was one of 2 beaches taken by US forces 80 years ago. Kenneth Nishiyori told us about the impact D-Day had on his grandfather, who took part in the landing.
I'm amazed that he was even actually here because it was an experience he never talked about. Like a lot of veterans, you rarely heard any war stories. And I knew he was in the Army, but that was it. Growing up as a kid, I'd never heard any stories. It wasn't until I got a box of letters from my mom, from granddaddy to grandma, talking about his time in France.
Now, emergency teams, including 10 fire engines and some 70 firefighters, are tackling a major blaze in East London. It broke out in the 10-floor construction site in Canning Town. There have been no reports of any injuries so far. People in the area are being advised to keep their windows and doors closed. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The Royal College of Nursing is warning of an irretrievable downward spiral in the NHS because of declining numbers of nurses starting degree courses. A new report has found the official NHS workforce plan for England will be almost 11,000 recruits short by 2025 if the current trend continues. Now, ministers were urged to prioritise a plan to increase student applications for the next years to tackle the crisis. Nursing students pay university fees of over £9,000 a year, which has caused applicant numbers to significantly drop. A 91-year-old man has become the first person in England to be fitted with a groundbreaking artificial cornea. 91-year-old Cecil John Farley says his sight is now improving thanks to the procedure, which he underwent after 15 years of suffering from problems with his eyes. Doctors hope one day the new artificial corneas could reduce the need for human donations. Mr. Farley says the transplant surgeries enabled him to continue to see his 83-year-old wife, Elizabeth, which presumably is a plus. And now for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to the website for more details. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
10:07, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearson. But a lot of you getting in touch in your droves and droves.
Absolutely. Gary has said, morning, folks. About Labour and Tories, if we keep voting for the same old, we will keep getting the same old. This country needs radical change. Apparently, I said the wrong date. Did I say it was the 4th of May? I did.
4th of July. Try the 4th of July. American independence.
No, today's the 4th of June.
Oh.
None of us. You're living in the future. I'm living in the past. Thank you, George, for pointing that out. I still can't believe we're in June. I don't know how that happened. I remember saying that January was dragging on. That was only 5 minutes ago.
3 weeks and we're at the longest day.
I can't get my head around that at all. Nigel will send immigrants back to France, he said. Says Ruby, that would be a good idea. A lot of you commenting on immigration. This contest tonight between Sunak and Starmer, it's at 9 p.m. And on ITV2 will be Love Island. We'll be launching on 9 p.m. So people are saying that actually they think more people will watch Love Island. Maybe if Sunak and Starmer did it in their swimming trunks, that might get a few people tuning in. Of course, we would say Patrick Christie's at 9 p.m. is a much more entertaining watch than those two droning on. And actually, I'm no doubt that will just be one big bore off. And Patrick will tell you what happens anyway, so watch Patrick. Here we go. Colin has said, I've been saying for quite a while now, I find it even hard to sign my name because I so rarely use a pen. Does anybody else feel the same? And this is because there's some research. Go on, can you sign your own name, Andrew?
GBNews pen, yeah, a GBNews pen.
You've got used to doing this, though, signing your book recently, haven't you? You've
yeah,
got a little bit. Very nice, very lovely. It's a lovely handwriting. We might show you our handwriting in a little while. I agree, says JM. There should be more handwritten letters sent. I remember as a child having to sit down and write thank you letters.
Yes, at Christmas and birthdays.
However, due to ever-increasing costs of postage, this has become increasingly more expensive. My Christmas card list has now dwindled to the absolutely necessary. Those who do send anything by post seem to be penalised for doing so. In order to encourage postal use, it would seem more cost-effective to reduce the price of stamps, not increase it.
Fascinating, isn't it? And of course, lots of you are getting in touch about Nigel. Of course you are. Nigel Farage, who's electrified this very tedious, otherwise, I think, general election campaign.
Yeah.
What have we got to go? 4 weeks and a bit? Well, so Labour is on course to win a landslide, according to the latest GB News People's poll.
It sees 46% of the public voting for Labour, while 22% would vote Conservative.
A YouGov poll says Labour's on course to win 422 seats in the Commons, with the Tories on just 140. That would be even bigger than the 97 Blair landslide.
And that was before Nigel Farage announced that he was standing as Reform UK's MP in Essex. But could this all change with the TV debate tonight between Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, joining us now is political commentator Benedict Spence and the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. Morning to you both, gentlemen. Let's go to you first, Kevin Schofield. It's all for Sunak now because Starmer is so far ahead. He's got to pull something out of the bag.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it is that he can possibly do to turn it around now. I mean, it was remarkable last night. In the space of an hour, we had Nigel Farage announcing that he was going to stand, and then we had this YouGov poll drop at 5 p.m, which shows, confirms what every other poll really has been saying, that Labour are on course for a massive majority. I really don't think there's anything that Rishi Sunak can do tonight. I think he'll come out swinging. He's got to be the one that sets the pace, gets on the front foot, tries to grab the headlines, tries to force Keir Starmer into some sort of misstep or gaffe. But ultimately, I don't think really it's going to change many people's minds. I mean, people will tune in largely, I think, having already decided which way they're going to vote, and anything short of Keir Starmer, I don't know, collapsing, passing out, punching Rishi Sunak. I think it's the only thing that can possibly turn this election round now.
Benedict, is there something a bit old-fashioned and outdated about these head-to-head debates between two men? There was some amazing statistics about how few young people are going to vote Conservative in the next election. This sort of event just doesn't cut through with younger voters, does it?
Well, I think that's as much a reflection on the caliber of the two people debating, or in the case of the big BBC one, the 7 people debating. Look, I think the 7-person one is a bit pointless. I think it turns into a bit of a sort of a question time style jamboree. People get lost. People sort of descend into shouting over each other. But when it comes to the two leaders head to head, I do think actually that you can land some blows, so to speak. But as you say, it's not because people will necessarily be looking at it in a linear format. They might just be looking at how it's clipped later. Of course, we all remember the famous clip between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, where she said something, I can't remember what, and Donald Trump's response was to say, because under me you'd be in jail. Yeah. And that sort of went viral and did magnificently for Donald Trump. We're not going to see something like that with Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer, because neither of them have that kind of charisma. They're not very good with one-liners. You know, anybody who has had the misfortune of sitting through Prime Minister's questions will be able to tell you that these are not rabble-rousers. They're not barnstorming performers. So in that sense, no, this isn't really going to have much of an impact, as Kevin says, unless something truly unexpected happens live in front of the nation. And even then, I suspect Keir Starmer might even edge it, even if it was him who committed the faux pas. I suspect actually he's sort of looking here and thinking, look, just don't say anything too ridiculous, and this is a shoo-in.
Kevin, do you think if Rishi was to introduce a policy, white rabbit out of the proverbial hat, that could change things? There's talk that he could do something on inheritance tax or even beef up his position on the European Convention on Human Rights. It would be most unconventional, unprecedented, in fact, to do it in a TV debate, but it would guarantee maximum exposure and it would really put Starmer on the spot. And he's not very good, in my experience, of being put on the spot.
No, you're right. I mean, that may well be something that they have in their locker. You know, that would be a bit of a Hail Mary pass, really, you know, just to try anything to shift the dial. But we've already seen policies being announced from the Conservatives. They've been pretty hyperactive, actually, during the campaign so far with national service, one or two other things. But again, nothing seems to be shifting the polls. In fact, nothing has really shifted the polls in 18 months, pretty much since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. It looks as though the public have already made up their minds. So, yeah, we might well see something that will grab the headlines. We'll get, you know, a splash in the paper tomorrow. But ultimately, I think we just have to come back to this realisation that the public want change. They've made up their minds. They might not be completely convinced, I think it's safe to say, by Labour. There's no great love or adulation for Keir Starmer, but I think people just want some fresh faces at the top of government, and unfortunately for the Conservatives, that means that they're on the way out.
Benedict, be psychic for a moment. What went through Rishi Sunak's brain at 4 p.m. yesterday when he heard that Nigel Farage was going to stand for reform?
I imagine it was a bit like, you know, those Vietnam films where you just hear the white noise and everything else goes silent and you can just sort of see into 1,000 yards away. I imagine it was something like that. He was already going to lose. That's the thing. Everybody already, I think, understands he was already going to lose. But this is where any possibility that he could even make it vaguely respectable. Oh, you got 90 seats rather than 70 seats. Well done, Rishi. Not going to happen. And I think that this is possibly even the moment where some within his team will be looking at him and going, would we really be worse off keeping you at this point? Actually, would nobody be better at this point? Because I think, not that that would happen, but just generally speaking, it has been such a disaster from the second it was launched. You know, the idea of going early, you know, launching it in a way without your policies properly laid out. Nothing has gone well. And now, just to add insult to injury, Nigel's thought, you know what, I'll come back because I reckon I can, you know, punch 7 shades out of these people. It's not going to get any better. And he is on course for perhaps the worst ever performance in Conservative electoral history. That's not a record that he wants, because that puts him right up there with Liz Truss in terms of how fondly he'll be remembered. And everybody thought that would be a very easy thing to avoid, and somehow he's going to manage it.
OK, thank you both, gentlemen. Kevin Schofield and Benedict Spence there.
It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or right, they're both agreeing it's hopeless for the Tories. That's the point.
Yeah, but it is hopeless for the Tories, but I do still wonder whether Reform can steal some seats off Labour.
I think they can.
Off Labour as well, that red wall.
In the red wall, where there's a lot of traditional working-class Labour voters who voted for Boris because they said he would get Brexit done, because they were fed up with Brexit, they said he would get it done.
Exactly.
And they were fed up with Labour councils that haven't delivered, and they might be drawn to Farage.
No income tax until you earn £20,000.
And he'll spend a lot of time in the red wall. He won't just be in his Clacton constituency, he'll be in the red wall, so that'd be interesting.
Talking of the Clacton constituency, we have to give you the full list of those who have declared so far, and they are. These are people who didn't think they were going to get their names heard on the telly so much, did they? Yovan Owusu-Nepal for the Labour Party, Giles Watling for the Conservative Party, Matthew Benson for the Liberal Democrats, Nigel Farage for Reform, and Natasha Osborne for the Green Party.
The list, of course, isn't finalised yet, as the deadline isn't until later this week. I think it's Thursday. And when that list is completed, it'll be published on the GBNews website. I suspect the monster raving Luna Party will definitely get a candidate there, because if nothing else, we know there's going to be a lot of attention when that result is called on January the 5th.
There'll be so many people now.
They'll be on the stage.
There will be so many people. Independent, pro-Palestinian candidates will also, no doubt, be now looking to stand in that area.
We've extended invitation, of course, to speak to all of the candidates.
You know where we are. Now then, up next, can you guess what the Prime Minister orders when he pops for a cheeky Nando's? Have you ever been to Nando's?
Once.
Oh. Don't forget, other chicken outlets are available too. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning, it's 10:21. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
We're going to cross briefly now to Labour leader Keir Starmer, who's been talking to reporters in Bolton.
Let immigration get out of control. We've got record numbers of people coming to this country, and they've now said they're going to have a visa cap. They've not said what the number is, so they've got a visa cap without a cap. We did have a visa cap before. Rishi Sunak argued to get rid of it, which they did in 2020, and now they're going back to it but without a number. It is utter chaos. They've lost control, and that's why this election can't come soon enough, because I think the country is crying out to say, just end the chaos, let's insert some control, turn a page and start to rebuild the country with Labour. And on immigration, we have to tackle the central issue, which is that we need a skills strategy in this country so we don't have to have so many people arriving on work visas, and we have to hammer down on bad bosses who aren't complying with Labour standards. And we would ban them from recruiting people from abroad. If you don't comply with our Labour standards, you shouldn't be allowed to recruit from abroad.
You criticise the Conservatives for not setting a number, but you also haven't set a number. Do you want to guarantee to people that you will cut net migration every year?
Yes, I want immigration to come down. It's far too high. The irony
that guarantee that you will cut net migration every year?
Net migration is far too high. This government has lost control. It is now more than twice as high as it was when we were in the EU. That's the irony of it. This Prime Minister is actually, for all his tough talk, is the most liberal Prime Minister when it comes to immigration. Those numbers have gone through the roof. They need to come down. Can you just say
that you will guarantee that it will come down under a Labour government?
They need to come down. We've got a plan to bring them down, but you can't wish them down. That's what the Tories are doing, just plucking numbers and wishing and hoping for the best. You have to understand why they're high. The skills strategy isn't here. We need to fix that, and we need to bear down on bad bosses who are undercutting labour standards. That's what we would do.
Okay. A tweet appeared on...
Well, that's Keir Starmer on the campaign trail in Bolton. We've got our panel here, Piers Pottinger, who's advised all sorts of Tory politicians over the years, and Nigel Nelson, our chief political commentator. Look, we've got the big debate tonight. If you were advising Sunak, who is now facing mission impossible, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said on this programme, Rishi's soon gone, and
yes,
it's just getting sooner. I mean, they're digging a hole deeper and deeper for themselves. And actually, it was very noticeable in that clip with Keir Starmer how he seems to me to be coming over in a much more confident manner.
Do you think he's growing during the campaign?
I think that showed he was much more confident. And, of course, what he said was right. And the Conservatives just dishing out these policies in a kind of haphazard way isn't having any effect on the polls all show it's having absolutely no effect on the electorate. But what I'd be saying to Rishi tonight has a really big chance, because the one area where I think he has a real opportunity is face-to-face with Rishi, with Keir Starmer, if he gets to put the right questions. For example, Starmer declared himself as a socialist. And I would use the quote from Winston Churchill, who defined socialism as, he says, it's a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery. And there is our greatest Prime Minister talking about socialism. I'd ask Keir Starmer to define socialism, because he said he's a socialist. And, of course, he won't want to do that because he really will frighten some of the people who'll be voting for him.
What do you think has... I mean, your man, Starmer, he doesn't have... If he went on stage and said nothing, it wouldn't impact much in the polls, would it?
I wouldn't have thought so. Not the way things are going. We've had a week of it. The polls are getting worse rather than better. We've seen the latest, the MRP ones, which are the most detailed types of polls. They're just coming up with figures that are worse than the previous week. So I think that what happens at tonight's debate is you've got someone like Keir Starmer, a professional prosecutor. He will deploy all those talents against Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is in the dock over 14 years of Tory rule, and I can see that Keir Starmer will just pick him apart on those various things.
He's not very good in PMQs. Why would he be any better tonight?
I just think it's a different format. I think PMQs is a slightly different thing. You're tending to take sort of one subject, of the day. He can range over a whole load of things, and this is what I mean about his sort of prosecution skills. He can then drill down into what Sunak says, and that's the way to unfoot him.
But the question really is whether Keir Starmer is going to answer any of the questions directly, which he's very good at avoiding. And it was noticeable when Nigel Farage made his announcement yesterday. When it came to questions, he does at least answer every single question directly and doesn't come up with some platitudes attacking the other side because he doesn't want to answer the question. Even if Nigel doesn't want to answer a question, he answers it. Now, Keir is bad at that, and if Rishi is good enough to push hard enough, this is his opportunity. Let's face it, it's Keir Starmer, it's his debate to lose tonight. I mean, the polls are so far ahead. In fact, I would be advising, if I was advising Keir, to do as few of these debates as possible, because it's going to be hard for him to go further ahead unless Rishi makes a complete mess of this.
There's meant to be one in a couple of weeks' time. If you were Labour and you're this far, would you just say, sorry, I'm busy?
I don't want to look as though... I would tell him, they can't look as though they're running scared, but equally, why have debates when you don't need to? And in this country, debates tend not to have quite as much effect as they do in America, say. But, of course, the exception being Clegg, who did very well in that famous debate against Cameron. But It'll be interesting to see the viewing figures tonight.
It will.
How many people of the electorate are actually interested in this? Because boredom is here, and the only fizz in the election so far was Nigel yesterday.
Absolutely, and it's also, I'm sure you're aware of this, Piers, but it's the launch of the new series of Love Island on ITV2 at the same time tonight.
Nigel's going to be glued to it.
Which...
He's just waiting for his invitation to join the programme.
I had no idea, so I will have to tune in.
But there is a kind of relevant point about that, which is about the generations. And we've had these polling about the fact that so few under 30s, Nigel, will vote for the Conservatives. I mean, it was something like, wasn't it less than
5% or
5%?
something?
Yes. Yes, I mean, as you got the age range, that once you're over 65, you seem to be a Tory. Even some of those are now saying
they do still watch old-fashioned TV, and they might be watching on terrestrial TV tonight. But actually, Benedict Spence made the really good point. This debate is going to be how it can be clipped up for social media.
For TikTok.
How will they get in these little sound bites, these little moments which might turn the dial?
A little bit of that, I agree. But also, I think it's very important with the polls. One mistake, an awful lot of these polls, except for the MRP, but a lot of the modelling that is all based on demographics. And when it comes to demographics, it's very difficult to separate Reform and Conservative voters in any meaningful way. And so there's a lot of a grey area between Reform and Conservatives. And while everyone is saying Reform may not get any seats, there may be some very big surprises here because things are so bad for the Conservatives. And I mean, in Clacton, where Nigel's standing, a good friend of mine, Giles Watling, is standing MP, a very, very nice man, a former actor. And, of course, he was actually once in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, believe it or not. Yes, in the touring version. And Giles is a nice man and very popular locally. But the poll I've just seen from Clacton shows Nigel 10 points ahead in Clacton now.
Gosh.
So,
and that's before he even arrives.
And that's before he's even started or officially launched in Clacton. So I think, the signs are very, very good for Reform. I think Nigel coming back has timed this brilliantly. And Rishi tonight is going to have to really convince Reform voters or people who are more likely to vote Reform that he is a true Conservative, which I'm afraid to say he doesn't look like.
No, but another pitch he might it might get this desperate. They have to say if you vote Reform, you're going to give Labour a landslide. Well, might that be the Tory pitch in the end?
It will be the Tory pitch, and they're already saying it, and that's why they come out saying a vote for Reform is a vote for Labour. When it comes to Nigel standing in a seat, I think he's got to realise that it's not good enough just to be Nigel Farage. So Douglas Carswell...
It might be.
Well, I was with Nigel down in South Thanet in 2015, so spent some time with him on the campaign trail. I thought he was a shoo-in because he was being mobbed, he was having selfies at every sort of second step. There was no question. Everyone wanted to shake his hand, but that didn't quite turn into votes. So
it's a different world now. We're nearly 10 years on, aren't we?
Yeah, but with Clacton, I mean, the point that Douglas Carswell, who won the seat for UKIP, said is the point about that is you've also got to be a local MP. You've also got to represent your constituents, listen to their concerns, which won't be about some of those big issues.
Yeah.
No, and Giles is a very good local MP. There's no doubt about it.
And Giles, you might know him best because he played the vicar in Bread. Do you remember that series, Carla Lane's Bread? He was the vicar in that.
And his father, Jack Watling, was a great actor, and his sisters, one of them particularly, Dilys, was a great actress too.
He might be going back to acting quite soon, Piers.
Well, he
bear
might
with
well
us.
be. And,
we have to give you this list again. Here we go. Labour Party.
Here we go.
Yovan Owosu Nepal, Giles Watlington, Conservative Party.
Matthew Ben Sillam, Liberal Democrats, Nigel Farage, Reform, Natasha Obson, Green Party. More candidates may yet come forward.
And we have invited them all onto GB News to talk to us. Right, it is just after 10:30. Thank you, gentlemen. We've got the latest news now with Aaron.
Very good morning to you. It's 10:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Conservatives have announced a plan to reduce the number of migrant visas handed out each year. The cap on those coming to the UK to work or join family would be based on a recommendation by the Migration Advisory Committee and would be voted on by MPs. Net migration levels, that's the difference between people leaving and arriving in the UK each year, are now 3 times higher than they were in 2019. Labour have called the Tory plan meaningless, but Home Secretary James Cleverly says it will balance the benefits and the cost of migration. The Labour leader says his party would close the door on President Putin by reducing Britain's reliance on energy from overseas. Sir Keir Starmer will announce his plan to set up a publicly owned green power company on a visit to the northwest. He says GB Energy, which will be based in Scotland, will help to protect the UK from spikes in fuel prices like those that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Lib Dems are promising free personal care for adults in need, including the elderly and disabled. So Ed Davey says he wants to pay carers an extra £2 an hour above the national living wage, investment that would ultimately benefit the NHS. The party leader, a carer for his disabled son, has described the issue as deeply personal. He'll outline his party's belief provision of care should be based on need rather than the ability to pay. And a ferry carrying D-Day veterans to France for the 80th anniversary commemorations has set sail from Portsmouth with a flotilla of other ships. The Mont Saint-Michel is being accompanied by 3 Royal Navy patrol vessels, a mine hunter, a training ship and a tugboat as it leaves Portsmouth Harbour. Now, US troops have already been on board a replica landing craft at Omaha Beach this morning. That's part of the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. Omaha, one of 2 beaches taken by US forces 80 years ago. Scan the QR code on your screen for GB News Alerts. You can also go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buys you $1.2766, 1.1740 euros. The price of gold, £1,826, 10 pence per ounce. The FTSE 100 is at 8,206 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1M in County Durham, there's a lane closed northbound. Someone has a puncture between junctions 61 and 62 from Boven to Carville, causing delays. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 23 and 22, between Huddersfield and Rishworth Moor, with queues from junction 25 at Brigg House. There are also 2 lanes closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 25 and 24 from Brigg House to Ainley Top, causing queues. On the M6 in Cheshire, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 18 and 19 from Middlewich to Knutsford, with queues back beyond junction 16 at Stoke-on-Trent. In London, the North Circular is closed northbound onto the A40 at Hanger Lane, where a lorry's overturned with long delays on approaches to there. And in Dorset on the A31, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between St Ives and Ringwood, causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldiers' role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifleman. I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for two guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
Very good morning. So, as the 80th anniversary of D-Day approaches, the commemorations are beginning ahead of official events in Portsmouth and Normandy over the next 2 days.
Well, over the past week, GB News has been speaking to veterans and remembering those who fought for our freedom.
So joining us this morning is GB News Home Security Editor Mark White from Portsmouth and GB News reporter Sophie Reaper from Arromanches in Normandy. Sophie, what's happening there?
Well, it's a hive of activity here in Arromanches, and joining me now, we won't keep anyone waiting, we have the 1st Battalion Light Infantry and their nominated spokesperson, Richard. Very nice to see you this morning, everyone, but also yourself.
Yeah.
Talk to me about yourselves. Why was it so important that you wanted to be here for the 80th anniversary of D-Day?
Well, some of us were on the beaches on the 40th anniversary in front of Reagan and the Queen. We decided to repeat that 40 years on and come and march from Utah Beach all the way to Pegasus Bridge, where we're in a parade where we march over at midday on the 6th of June, marking D-Day. Our operation is called Ham and Jam, which it was called back in the D-Day, where they took 2 bridges, one of them being which was Pegasus, and it's the Ox and Bucks Light Infantry that took that bridge, and we're the descendants of the Ox and Bucks Light Infantry.
Well, there's quite a few of you. I think if we pan out, we can see just how many of you there are. Talk to me a bit about the light infantry. I know we were speaking earlier, you're very known for being the fastest in the world for your march. Do you want to talk to me a bit about that?
Yeah, well, our tradition is to march at 140 paces to the minute, and back in the day we were skirmishing regiments and we got to the battle quickly, and that's how we won our wars or our battles, and you know that's why we're famous. And plus also the bugle. So we were commanded by the bugle for all of, going to the cookhouse, going to the battle, standing to attention, everything, and that's why you see the bugle on all of our T-shirts. Okay.
Now, of course, we're at Arromanches today, which is part of Gold Beach, one of the British beaches on D-Day. How important is that a part of your heritage? How does it feel to you to kind of know that it was British men that were landing here on D-Day all those years ago?
Well, it's very poignant for us just to walk, because we're doing the whole coast. We're seeing it from an angle of what the Germans would see it from, and the British attacking. So when we walk round, my friend John Shrigley, he's a historian, he tells us what happened where, and it makes us even prouder as we're marching around.
Amazing. Gents and ladies, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this morning. I'm not quite sure what time we're on, but we'll be bringing you all the latest here in Normandy over the coming days.
Thank you, Sophie. Oh, it'd be nice to be out in the fresh air this morning, wouldn't it? Mark White is down in Portsmouth. What's happening there, Mark?
Well, the Brittany Ferries that was carrying some 30 veterans heading off to Normandy left here just after 8 o'clock this morning. A sizable crowd gathered actually to see that ferry leaving here, which was flanked by a Royal Navy minesweeper, Royal Navy patrol aircraft and a couple of the old World War II era patrol torpedo boats as well, heading across to Normandy with those veterans, and really quite a poignant sight because it is expected to be the last major D-Day commemoration in which we will see veterans attend, at least in any sizable numbers. The last time on the 75th anniversary, it's estimated there were some 500 D-Day veterans still living in the UK. That number is now below 100, but many still wanted to be here, and the crowds certainly appreciated that. This is what some of the crowds said to me when I spoke to them earlier.
And it's just a privilege to be here today with the freedom that we all have and that a lot of people maybe take for granted a little bit.
fantastic day. I think more people should be here, really.
Really kind of loud, actually, and really cool.
Well, among the veterans on that Brittany ferry is George Chandler, who was on board one of those motor torpedo boats guarding the fleet of some 7,000 vessels involved in the D-Day landings, and he was up at Omaha Beach. And he spoke to me. This is a man who is over 100 now. He's virtually blind, he's very deaf, but his recollections of what happened that day, the horrific scenes that he saw on Omaha Beach, are still so vivid. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Unfortunately, we had to lie outside and watch this going on, and it wasn't very nice to actually watch these kids. And they were kids, they were young. I was 19 at the time. These kids were younger than me, I know they were. And we've all heard of the brash American. Boy, oh boy, were we pleased they were like that. Every time I talk to somebody about D-Day, I'm there. I'm there on D-Day watching these young American Rangers trying to get into the... Some of them were killed before they even got off their assault craft.
As George says, every time he talks about D-Day, he's back there 80 years ago, and he and his comrades that are on board that ferry heading to Normandy will lay a reef just off the coast of Normandy at 1 o'clock this afternoon before several days of commemorations.
Oh, thank you,
Really
Mark.
moving,
Thank
really
you,
powerful.
Sophie. That's what real men look like, isn't
Oh, what a moving interview, wasn't it? I mean, and of course, the youngest of them are 98.
Yeah.
And they tell terrific stories. Some of them never want to talk about it.
No.
Because it's still so painful.
I'm sure.
And so many of them didn't even get out of the barges.
Yeah, amazing.
Shocking.
Right, key messages coming this morning, gbnews.com/your say. But up next, the National Literacy Trust has warned that the number of children writing in their spare time has fallen to a record low. So at home you can judge our writing. We've done a little... we were told to write, my favourite thing about Andrew is... And I've put his digestive biscuits.
Well, which have been stolen by the producer, who's called James Fanning. We're going to name and shame him. My favourite thing about Bev, I've been very nice about her, is that she says it as it is, even if I don't often agree with her.
Oh, that's nice.
But I write all the time, and don't you?
I write all the time.
I write letters and I write cards.
I'm a bit embarrassed about how superficial I was about your digestive biscuits.
See what I mean? Superficial. I could have said my favourite thing about her is her utter lack of depth.
I thought you were going to say my favourite thing about Bev is that she leaves the building at 12 o'clock. I don't have to see her until 9:30 the next morning.
That's
right.
my second favourite thing.
We're going to have a cup of tea and a biscuit now.
No, there's no biscuits. They've eaten them.
So there's nothing to like about you today. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be a fairly blustery day across northwestern areas, some more sunshine to come for these areas, but this morning the best of the sunshine is across the far southeast. Now it will cloud over here later on in the day, but it's still fairly mild out there. Elsewhere, further north and west, it's turning much colder through the day. That's as this band of cloud and rain moves away from the northwest, sinking into parts of Wales, northern England, into central parts by the middle of this afternoon as well. We could see some heavy bursts of rain in here. Now to the north of here, we've got colder air, but some sunshine and some blustery showers moving in by this afternoon. Highs of around 14 or 15 degrees in the north, closer to 20 degrees in the south and east. Now through the rest of the afternoon, that band of cloud and rain will continue to sink southwards, so it will be a fairly bright end to the day across eastern areas of Scotland, but across the northwest, that's where we've got these most frequent showers, and you can see there is some evidence of snow falling over the high ground. That's above around 800 metres in Scotland. It'll be a fairly dry end to the day across northwestern England, parts of North Wales as well, but across central parts of England and southern areas of England as well, a pretty cloudy and possibly quite a damp end to the day. Now that cloud and rain will continue its journey south and eastwards throughout tonight, so it will turn much clearer once that cloud and rain pushes away to the south and east. But it is going to turn much colder through this evening, as behind that cloud and rain we are into much colder air. So temperatures will widely dip down into the lower single figures rurally, into the mid-single figures for many towns and cities. But it will be a fairly bright start to the day on Wednesday, particularly if you are further south and east. Actually, towards the north and west, it's going to be another blustery day with frequent, possibly heavy, possibly thundery showers. And again, there's a risk of some snow falling through Wednesday morning over the high ground of Scotland, above around 600 metres, which is fairly unusual for the time of year. And it's going to be a fresher day wherever you are, with temperatures struggling to get into the high teens.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So it's 10:49. The number of children who enjoy writing in their spare time has dropped to an all-time record low, according to the National Literacy Trust.
So only 3 in 10, fewer than 3 in 10 young people aged 8 to 18 said they like writing outside the classroom. And surprise, surprise, it comes amid a sharp rise in screen time.
But does it matter? What are we losing? The founder of London Letters, Jennifer Bishop, joins us now. Jennifer, this is such a fascinating topic. What are we losing if the next generation can only ever type information and not write it down?
Well, I think it's quite a terrifying prospect to think that the younger generation might not be able to use a pen anymore. And we are certainly headed that way, where we're losing the ability for, like, just the actual ability to write letters isn't focused as much on in schools anymore. And there's been a huge shift, understandably, in the use of screens, iPads, because kids need to learn how to type. They need to know how to surf the internet. But what we're losing is that connection through the written word by doing that. Like things like greetings cards won't be sent anymore.
Yeah, how sad is that?
That'll be forgotten.
Thank you cards.
Thank you letters, thank you cards. They won't be done anymore because everything will be fired off instantly in a WhatsApp message.
Now, I know that if I write something down, I am more likely to remember it and retain it. I remember being at uni and loving sitting there writing handwritten notes. The next generation, we see them now at university, they sit there typing. Are we losing something neurologically? Has anything been proven about that cognitive process?
Yes, so it's absolutely been proven that when we write stuff down, we're more likely to retain that information. Wow. There is a scientific correlation between the physical act of writing and you being able to remember that information. So when you're writing your university notes, you'll remember what you've written down and how you've written it and stuff, and that's personal to how you've remembered that experience. When we're typing it, it's almost as if we're in like autopilot. We're listening and watching someone speak, but we're not actually taking that information in. And yes, we might go back to it, but wouldn't it be fantastic if in the first place we had taken it in to begin with, and we'd save ourselves some time as well? And I think the actual writing it down, using your handwriting, that is creating like physical movement with your hand. And when we're doing something physical with our hands that's creative, like writing, it's opening up pathways in our brains as well.
What is London Letters and why are you so passionate about this?
So London Letters is a stationery company that's centred around the promotion, I suppose, of letter writing and the lost art of letter writing, and trying to encourage more people to spend time with pen and paper. The idea being purely because it's a very meditative process, it's relaxing, letters are very important, and I believe that written words are extremely powerful. And now, as we're moving to almost a completely digital world, I believe that a letter that's been written by hand with sort of a slow consideration has actually never been so powerful. I imagine there's a lot of political leaders that get, or MPs, for example, that must get thousands upon thousands of emails per day.
They do.
But I wonder how many letters they get, and I wonder if they pay more attention to those letters.
Do you know what the irony is? That now that we are in a digital world, you've got more chance of being hacked and there's no privacy.
Yeah.
I know certain people in the public eye who've gone back to fax machines.
Really? Gosh,
So that because they're concerned about information being accessed, they're using a fax machine because you can just receive that fax, which could be a handwritten letter that you fax, and then the person rips it up and it's gone. So you might actually, there might be a glimmer of hope in this.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
How do you,
wouldn't it?
through your station company, how do you promote writing then?
So we actually run one of our most successful products is a pen pal club for adults. So we've got only over 650 members currently, and I founded the company 3 years ago. So there's a huge audience of people that are still interested in letter writing, and I think we probably all had a pen pal when we were younger at school.
Yeah.
But now as adults, there's people who want to still connect and make a friend through the written word. So we have new members joining every day at the moment who are looking to write to someone, and we put them in touch and then they get writing, and it's amazing to see that people can put their faith in a stranger just through the written word.
Nice. We're up against the clock a bit, Jennifer, but do you think teachers are on board with this as much as they should be?
I think there's a lot of pressure from the schools that they work for, but I believe that individual teachers would be on board with this. And we have a lot of teachers in our pen pal club that I've spoken to directly who want to promote it.
I hope so.
Where's your pen pal? Where does your pen pal live?
My pen pal, my own pen pal, is America.
Very nice.
Brilliant. Can I be your pen pal, Jennifer?
Please, yeah.
Right, don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Annie's got the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be a fairly blustery day across northwestern areas, some more sunshine to come for these areas, but this morning the best of the sunshine is across the far southeast. Now it will cloud over here later on in the day, but it's still fairly mild out there. Elsewhere, further north and west, it's turning much colder through the day. That's as this band of cloud and rain moves away from the northwest, sinking into parts of Wales, northern England, into central parts by the middle of this afternoon as well. We could see some heavy bursts of rain in here. Now to the north of here, we've got colder air, but some sunshine and some blustery showers moving in by this afternoon. Highs of around 14 or 15 degrees in the north, closer to 20 degrees in the south and east. Now through the rest of the afternoon, that band of cloud and rain will continue to sink southwards, so it will be a fairly bright end to the day across eastern areas of Scotland, but across the northwest, that's where we've got these most frequent showers, and you can see there is some evidence of snow falling over the high ground. That's above around 800 metres in Scotland. It'll be a fairly dry end of the day across northwestern England, parts of North Wales as well, but across central parts of England and southern areas of England as well, a pretty cloudy and possibly quite a damp end to the day. Now that cloud and rain will continue its journey south and eastwards throughout tonight, so it will turn much clearer once that cloud and rain pushes away to the south and east, but it is going to turn much colder through this evening, as behind that cloud and rain we are into much colder air. So temperatures will widely dip down into the lower single figures, rurally into the mid-single figures for many towns and cities. But it will be a fairly bright start to the day on Wednesday, particularly if you are further south and east. Actually towards the north and west, it's going to be another blustery day with frequent, possibly heavy, possibly thundery showers. And again, there's a risk of some snow falling through Wednesday morning over the high ground of Scotland, above around 600 metres, which is fairly unusual for the time of year. And it's going to be a fresher day wherever you are, with temperatures struggling to get into the high teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 4th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. So Nigel Farage has taken control of Reform UK and announced his plans to run for Parliament in the Essex constituency of Clacton. He's speaking from there. Very soon, we'll bring you that live.
Snoofest or gripping TV? Starmer and Sunak will go head-to-head tonight in the first TV debate of the election campaign. Are you gripped?
And free adult care. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey pledges that his party would offer free personal care for older or disabled people at home.
Fascinating this. Record low writing levels. A charity warns daily writing levels for children and young people have dropped to an all-time low because, of course, they're always on their gadgets.
And Stormy speaks out. The former porn star Stormy Daniels has urged Melania Trump to leave her husband and claimed that Donald Trump should be used as a punching bag at a women's shelter following his felony conviction.
I don't think Melania Trump needs marriage guidance from Stormy Daniels, do you?
That whole story absolutely stinks as far as I'm concerned. We're going to be talking to a Republican representative this morning.
You would think he'd got 34 separate criminal convictions, but actually the money that was paid to Stormy Daniels, for whatever reason, was allegedly, was in 34 separate tranches. So that's why there's 34 convictions. In Britain, that would be one charge.
Yeah. Democratic jury, Democratic judge, Democratic area.
Democratic Attorney General.
They found Donald Trump guilty.
And his ratings have soared.
What a surprise. Right, let us know your thoughts this morning on everything that we're discussing. gbnews.com/your say. First, the very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good morning to you. 2 minutes past 11. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Conservatives have pledged to reduce the number of migrant visas handed out each year. The cap on those coming to the UK to work or join family would be based on a recommendation by the Migration Advisory Committee and would be voted on by MPs. Now, net migration levels, that's the difference between people leaving and arriving in the UK each year, are now 3 times higher than they were in 2019. Home Secretary James Cleverly says their plans will strike a balance between benefits and cost.
So the last couple of years, the figures have been much, much, much too high, including on legal immigration. And there are some people that like that large volume of legal migration for work purposes. But what we're doing now is we're saying in the future, we will balance both the benefits of immigration, of course there are benefits, but also the cost of immigration.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the Conservatives are responsible for rising immigration and points out this reverses the decision the party took 4 years ago when it reformed the immigration system as part of Brexit.
The Conservatives have let immigration get out of control. We've got record numbers of people coming to this country, and they've now said they're going to have a visa cap. They've not said what the number is. They've got a visa cap without a cap. We did have a visa cap before. Rishi Sunak argued to get rid of it, which they did in 2020, and now they're going back to it, but without a number. It is utter chaos.
The Liberal Democrats are promising free personal care for adults in need, including the elderly and the disabled. Sir Ed Davey says he wants to pay carers an extra £2 an hour above the national living wage, and he says investment in the care sector would ultimately benefit the NHS. Now, Ed Davey, who's a carer for his disabled son, described the issue as a deeply personal one, and he will later outline his party's belief that provision of care should be based on need rather than the ability to pay. A ferry carrying D-Day veterans to France for the 80th anniversary commemorations has set sail from Portsmouth. The Mont Saint-Michel ferry is being accompanied by 3 Royal Navy patrol vessels, as well as a mine hunter and a training ship and a tugboat as it leaves Portsmouth Harbour. Now, US troops have been on a replica landing craft at Omaha Beach this morning. That's part of the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. Omaha, one of 2 beaches taken by US forces 80 years ago. Kenneth Nishori told us about the impact D-Day had on his grandfather, who took part in the landing.
I'm amazed that he was even actually here, because it was an experience he never talked about. Like a lot of veterans, you rarely heard any war stories. And I knew he was in the Army, but that was it. Growing up as a kid, I'd never heard any stories. It wasn't until I got a box of letters from my mom, from granddaddy to grandma, talking about his time in France.
10 fire engines and around 70 firefighters have been tackling a major blaze in East London. It broke out in the 10-floor construction site in Canning Town. No injuries have been reported so far, but people in the area have been advised to keep their windows and doors closed. The cause of the fire has yet to be established and investigations begun. The Royal College of Nursing is warning of an irretrievable downward spiral in the NHS because of declining numbers of nurses starting degree courses. A new report's found the official NHS workforce plan for England will be almost 11,000 recruits behind target by 2025 if the current trends continue. Ministers were urged to prioritise a plan to increase student applications for next year to tackle the crisis. Nursing students, though, pay university fees of more than £9,000 per year, which has caused applicant numbers to drop significantly. And a 91-year-old man has become the first person in England to be fitted with a groundbreaking artificial cornea. A 91-year-old Cecil John Farley says his sight is improving thanks to the procedure, which he underwent after 15 years of suffering with problems with his eyes. Doctors hope one day the new artificial corneas could reduce the need for human donations. Mr. Farley says it's enabled him to continue to see his 83-year-old wife, Elizabeth. And for more on all of our stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. The QR code is on your screen. The details are on our website. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
It's 11:08, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. In fact, it's 11:06.
Don't wish the morning away, Andrew.
No.
We've got
such a good time.
Biscuits
and of course,
coming.
We're building up, of course, to Nigel Farage arriving in Clacton. I imagine he'll be on that rather iconic pier. And he'll be making his speech there. It'll be It's the most excitement, isn't it, during this election campaign, which has been devoid of excitement, whether you like him or loathe him, and I appreciate he's a Marmite character. Nigel Farage is making what we call the political weather.
Ian has got in touch and said, you know what Keir Starmer needs to say more often? The phrase utter chaos. You're right, it's like word bingo. We should do word bingo when we hear these MPs talking at the moment, shouldn't we? All these candidates. No one's an MP anymore, are they?
No, we have no MPs at all. They ceased to be an MP yesterday.
Well, that's utter chaos, Keir Starmer would say, and we have a plan, is what Rishi Sunak says. Joe said, if schools were given the time and the opportunities for children to go into care homes, they could be challenged to write stories of the residents. These would also keep a sense of history and local respect within the community. I love that idea, Joe.
When we were kids doing our school stuff at school, I mean, you were marked on your content, you were marked on your punctuation. You were also marked on our handwriting.
Not anymore.
And if it was illegible, you would be marked down.
Not anymore. If schools promoted pen pals between schools, then it could be an avenue where children could have peer-to-peer support around daily life. It's so true. And Leslie said we had pen pals in school with a French school. They had to write back to us in English and we had to reply in French.
But also it gives you an insight into another culture, another way of thinking about things.
Yeah, but what they do now is they go on TikTok and they watch someone on a beach in, you know, wherever. And that's how they learn about the world, isn't it? It's somebody in a bikini showing them what suntan they use.
I'm on TikTok now, and I never look at people in bikinis on beaches.
Why does that not surprise me?
Ever. Or anybody in a beach on TikTok. I use it because it's a way of getting information out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You should be writing letters. This is the thing. We are in a state of flux, aren't we? It is a time of cultural change, but we are losing things, issues, like that Jennifer said, the cognitive process.
With the letters I've had about my book, I'm going to reply to every single person by handwriting because they wrote to me.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's rather...
nice.
Because it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
Much more personal putting it in an email.
And a lot of you are talking about Lib Dems' policy of free adult care for people in need. Vivian has said it's already available. It's called continuing healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to be careful about these announcements because none of the parties have addressed the elephant in the room, which is the social care package. Now, the Lib Dems are saying they'll pay carers an extra £2 an hour or more, just a start. But where's that money coming from?
It did sound quite generous, didn't it? With just the idea that you would just be given... I've got a friend who's nursing her mother at the moment. It's
so when we had carers for my dad... because with his dementia, did that mean my mum's going to have to pay the carers an extra £2? Because where was she going to get that from?
Yeah. And Maureen said, just to say, I think Andrew and Bev's show is one of the best on GB News. They say it like it is. And she also likes Michelle Dewberry. So do I.
Only one of the best, Maureen. We're not competitive here.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
We're all part of the GB News family. We all love each other most of the time.
Now, Labour is on course to win 422 seats in the Commons, beating a landslide achieved by Tony Blair in '97.
This YouGov poll, in this YouGov poll, the Tories are predicted to win a mere 140 seats. And think back to 2019, they had about 360.
Yeah.
It's a scale of what's happened in the last 5 years.
And that poll was before Nigel Farage announced that he was standing as Reform UK's MP in Clacton.
So Labour's campaign coordinator, Pat McFadden, spoke to GB News earlier. He tried to keep the smile off his face and tried to pretend, in my view, that he didn't seem particularly fazed about Nigel Farage's late entry into the race.
Our reaction was, just get on with the job. Keep going. It's an election. Anyone's entitled to stand. Anyone's entitled to be a candidate if they put themselves forward. It makes no difference to us. We're just going to keep on. Our focus is on the voters that we need to win in all these battleground seats. That's been our focus in recent years. We're offering them a changed Labour Party. We think we've got a good programme to turn the page on the Conservative years, and that's what we're going to keep talking about between now and polling day.
I'm sorry, I've known Pat McFadden for many, many years. He used to work in Number 10 when Blair was Prime Minister. They are cartwheeling around Labour HQ today because it is a gift that they prayed for. They were one of the virtues of Sunak going early was that it caught, we thought, Reform UK on the hop.
Yeah.
They didn't have candidates in the right places, they didn't have enough money, and Nigel Farage says he wouldn't run. Well, Nigel Farage is now running, so that whole strategy about an early election has unravelled.
Absolutely. We're asking today, could Rishi Sunak's fortunes change with this debate tonight as he squares up to Keir Starmer? Let's talk to political correspondent Catherine Forster about this. Catherine, the other thing that occurs to me, as much as Labour are celebrating that Nigel Farage might steal some votes from the Tories, I personally also think Nigel Farage appeals to a lot of Labour voters who are sick of both sides, basically, of the political uni-party.
Well, yes, certainly. I mean, he cuts through to ordinary people, doesn't he, in the way that somebody like Boris Johnson did, in the way that Donald Trump does in the States. Like him or loathe him, people have a view on him. And there's plenty of people think that both Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer are frankly just a bit dull. And some people will say that there's not much to pick between them. But, you know, Rishi Sunak has had a pretty rough ride in this general election campaign so far, starting with getting rained on with the announcement and being photographed near exit signs, etc., etc. They've made all these policy announcements. The polls have not shifted at all. Well, in fact, they have shifted, but they've shifted in the wrong direction for the Conservative Party. So nothing seemed to be working. And then yesterday, they had the double blow, didn't they, of first of all, these polls pretty much predicting a wipeout, and then the sort of Exocet missile into their campaign of Nigel Farage saying that he'd had a change of thought, and having previously said the day after the election was announced that he was going to focus on the states, that it was too tight to get organised for the general election, now announcing that he's going to stand in Clacton. Now, there's about a 25,000 majority there, but he could well win because, of course, UKIP represented that seat before. So this debate tonight on television, there is a huge amount riding on that for the Prime Minister because, of course, the Prime Minister, number 10, desperately need something to change, whereas Sir Keir Starmer wants nothing to change, wants to take as few risks, say as little as possible. So it's interesting because it's normally the person defending, the person in charge, who isn't keen on the debates. But Rishi Sunak has said, yeah, I'll do as many debates as you like. Sir Keir Starmer has said, no, just 2. Thank you. They're both quite untested because, of course, Rishi Sunak wasn't elected. He was only elected by MPs, but not the membership and not the British public, and Sir Keir Starmer elected by the membership too. So number 10 will be hoping that they get positive, energetic Rishi rather than tetchy Rishi, which we occasionally do see. And Sir Keir Starmer will be hoping that nothing goes wrong.
All right, Catherine, just before you go, he can't afford to be tetchy, can he?
No, he really can't. And I have to say, I've been around the Prime Minister quite a lot in the last month or so. He has been quite incredibly, to me, given the polls, very, very upbeat and positive. Despite everything, I have seen no trace of tetchy Rishi, but we have seen it going back here and there. Occasionally, he can get frustrated and get a bit irritable. And, occasionally in the leadership debates with Liz Truss as well, he would talk over her. He didn't always come across well. There's going to be a huge amount of pressure on him tonight. Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, is prepping with him. He's prepped lots of leaders before, but yeah, a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister tonight.
All right, that's Catherine Forster, our political correspondent. Do you remember one of the, you probably can't remember, why would you, the debates between Truss and Sunak in the Tory leadership contest? Sunak interrupted Truss 20 times in 12 minutes. It looked very bad. It looked unchivalrous.
No, I don't remember
that. It looked like he was bullying her. And I think he's learnt a lesson from that. Don't interrupt. Let people finish.
Oh!
Don't know what she means.
Pot kettle black. Right. Here is a full list of those who've declared their candidacy in the Clacton constituency.
And just to interrupt it, we have to do this because this is election rules. Carry on. No, if you wonder why we keep doing it, it is the law of the land.
Jovan Owusu Nepal, Labour Party. Giles Watling for the Conservative Party.
Matthew Bensilem, Lib Dem. Nigel Farage, Reform. Natasha Obsen, Green Party.
So, Stormy Daniels has called for Donald Trump to be sentenced to jail and to be the punching bag at a woman's shelter.
This is, of course, after Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records to conceal hush money payments to the adult star before the 2016 election.
So, would President Trump still run for presidency if he's in a jail cell? Yes, I think we know that he will. But let's speak to Jennifer Ewing from Republican Overseas now. Jennifer, thank you for joining us this morning. So we're all still kind of digesting what this guilty charge will mean for Donald Trump. And Stormy Daniels has been on British TV this morning, just throwing a bit more salt in the wound, actually. How is this playing out with the American electorate?
Sure. So actually, as a side note, I'm in Oslo, Norway at the Oslo Freedom Forum, and I'm really surprised at how many people here are looking at what's going on in the U.S. with the political persecution of Donald Trump. And these are by no means all conservative people, a lot of them old school liberals, and they can just see we can't use the justice system in this way. So that's the side note. But, and Andrew, thank you so much for pointing out that it's basically 34 guilty, for 34 guilty charges, but for the same thing, 33 times, because a lot of people do not point that out. So with regards to Stormy Daniels, I mean, as we know, we did not even need to hear her testify. It's strange that the judge allowed that. I think they just wanted to further, make it look more salacious, tarnish Trump's reputation, maybe hope to get a few more women that, didn't like the look of this alleged affair that had taken place in Lake Tahoe many, many years ago. But this case, at the end of the day, was an outdated misdemeanor case about bookkeeping. It was a bookkeeping error. And because that it had outrun the statute of limitations, and as you guys pointed out, the district attorney had run on, I'm going to get Trump, and the judge is a big partisan. We can go into that a little more. And then, of course, Manhattan, New York City voted 85% against Trump. So that's what he was looking at. And this, in order for them to revive this Frankenstein case, they needed to attach it to a felony. And it wasn't until the very last day that, we even knew what the felony charges would be, whether it was federal election or, a tax violation, and also the crazy, unprecedented instructions that the jury was given that they didn't even have to agree on what the felony charge was.
Jennifer, what about, a lot of people are speculating about the no-show of Melania, the former, his wife. She wasn't at the court case. She said nothing. Should we read much into that?
No, is the answer. No. I mean, that was exhausting. That was 6 weeks. Trump half the time was like boring. My understanding is they made the courtroom as uncomfortable as possible. One thing that we know about President Trump is that he doesn't do virtue signaling. Just like he doesn't do identity politics. He's authentic. And oftentimes that's what gets him into trouble because he's speaking off the cuff and saying things that people say, I can't believe you just said this out loud. But, I know a lot of these politicians, when they get in trouble, especially if it's something around, an infidelity or something like that, which, by the way, actually wasn't what the case was about. They make their wife stand next to them so it looks like everything's okay. He didn't feel the need to do that. No, I wouldn't read anything into it.
Jennifer, I can't have you here without just reflecting for a little bit on the congressional testimony yesterday that Dr. Anthony Fauci, so if you're watching in this country, he was a bit like the Patrick Vallance, Chris Whitty character. He was the head of the NIH during the pandemic. He got an absolute kicking yesterday. It was full 2.5 hours. I watched it. It was joyous for me. It was therapy because a lot of people will see this man as being responsible for pushing the fear, for masking children at schools, etc., and for vaccine mandates. What were the dynamite moments for you?
Sure. And I know everybody is, looking at Marjorie Taylor Greene's testimony, which was full of lots of drama and actually some very quite sad pictures of beagles being experimented on. But the real star, I thought, was the Republican congressman from Georgia, Rich McCormick, who is a medical doctor himself, who treated patients throughout the pandemic, and basically said, to Fauci, replayed something that Fauci had said, that was something to the effect that it is proven when we make people's lives difficult, they will give up their ideological BS and get vaccinated. So this is done. And then a couple other highlights just quickly. He basically said all of that 6 feet, which was how we measure in America, the distance we needed to stay apart. Where did you come up with that? What was the science? No science, no science. That was arbitrary. And what about masking children, Bev, as you just, talked about? I'm not sure where that came from. So they've absolutely destroyed faith in America's public health institutions. And I don't have to tell you, I mean, the amount of people that were bullied and shamed and silenced simply for wanting a debate or discussion on the origin story of COVID or vax mandates or masks. We should have been having those discussions all along.
That's right.
And the censorship was out of control.
Yeah, it was wonderful to watch yesterday.
Yeah.
Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas, thank you so much for joining us. Now, can you guess the Prime Minister's favourite Nando's?
No, as I've only been once, and I know it's all about chicken, I'm struggling. But we're going to tell you.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it's go straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides.
As you make your decision,
in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
(10:26) with Britain's News on GB News at 11:27. You know what we're talking about digestives? Beverly Turner is actually eating one at the moment.
You just caught me eating the end of my biscuit. Can I thank Nigel Nelson? We sent him on a biscuit run and he went out.
We did.
Thank you. Went to Marks and Spencer's, bought our digestives.
But
thank you, Nigel.
Talking food, Piers Pottinger.
Yeah.
If you'd been asked this question on the campaign trail if you were Prime Minister, what is your favourite Nando's order? I think you might be able to answer it.
Well, I think for Rishi, obviously as a lame duck Prime Minister, he's going to put some peri-peri on his lame chicken.
Oh, God.
To spice it up a bit.
Very good.
As he needs to spice up the campaign, I would be going for the extra hot peri-peri to give it some real spice. I mean, Nando's, I remember when they started, and I thought they were very good, and I used to take my children to the one in Cambridge. And I thought they were very good, the nicely grilled chicken. But more recently, I think it's spread and become so big. I think some of the outlets are less appealing.
Nothing works anymore, Piers. Everything's gone downhill.
But interesting, that when he was asked this, because he was at a girls' football team, he was able to answer Sunak. He said his favourite order was a half chicken, medium spice with chips and broccoli, and it's good broccoli. So he can't have been making that up.
Oh no, I'm sure he had that.
Because he's got two children.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, his girls will take it. It's where the kids always want to go. But he's a bit dull that way. He does say though.
Yeah, I like Nando's. I mean, I would actually swap Rishi's broccoli for the corn on the cob. Is my only sort of change for it. But I'm not sure.
You do very nice corn on the cob.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd vote for somebody just because they eat Nando's.
No, OK.
Well, this might swing your vote. The Prime Minister said he likes to mix it up sometimes, and he gets boneless chicken thighs.
Well, why not?
What is the appeal? Is it inexpensive?
Well, yes. It's quite cheap. It is also very quick, and it is spicy, and you can actually choose the level of spice.
And can you have a vegetarian version?
Halloumi?
I think you probably can.
But they also have unlimited soda drinks.
Right.
So if you go and you want your lemonade and your Diet Coke...
I did go with my nieces and they said, Uncle Andrew, you can have more fizzy drinks, but I haven't had any fizzy drinks. I had a cup of tea, I was so boring. The only fizz I like is in alcohol.
Quite.
Well,
gin.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we are going to get so many more of these, aren't we, in the election campaign? These questions asked of these leaders about these random, banal issues. Yeah, exactly. Right, let's talk about this then, Piers. This is about the number of children who enjoy writing in their spare time has dropped to an all-time low. Do you use a pen, and what do we lose if people don't write with hand anymore?
Well, I still write thank you letters, and I think, I mean, I don't get many. And it's not because I'm mean, it's just that people don't bother anymore. And it's a pity. I remember on Boxing Day, my parents would make me sit down, and to anyone who'd been kind enough to send me a present, I had to write thank you letters there and then. On Boxing Day.
Really?
And it was a very important part of the ritual. And thank you letters are a good discipline. And also writing is a good discipline because what you write converts into language, and these days you hear, if you travel on the underground or a bus, you hear all these teenagers, their most common use of word is like.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is like this, like. And if you actually force them to write something down, you wouldn't see the word like appear.
Such a good point.
And I would make them write more.
Yeah.
It's also...
because writing is a very good discipline.
Nigel, it's also about the fact that I want to be able to communicate with somebody without having charging my battery. You are always reliant on something being charged if you could never write something.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, writing is the way to do it. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer since I was 8 years old. So going to journalism was a natural kind of move there.
Were you a good writer at 8?
Yes, I was actually. There was one subject I was good at.
You're still a very good writer.
Yeah. The only thing I would say about this is that creativity comes in many forms. So if kids actually want to design a computer game, or they want to build some kind of different communication device. Everything is moving so quickly that those laptops you've got there probably in 5 years' time will be obsolete or be using something completely different.
Yeah, well, they really.
So the idea that kids are so much more computer literate than we are, and if they're using that for to get their creative juices going, I think that's a good thing. So it's not just a matter about writing.
It was Spike Milligan who got me into writing. I read his silly verse for kids as a child, and I wrote him a verse back saying, I do not like reading poetry. It is a dreadful bore, but this one's very easy. There isn't any more. And he wrote back.
Did he?
And it turned into actually, I have a lot of correspondence. Spike and I wrote to each other over the years, and some of my letters and some of his to me are in a book of his letters, actually.
Oh, fantastic.
But he was reading that verse was what really got me interested in poetry, which I've always been very interested in.
Interesting.
And it's reading and writing are two basic skills, but should be encouraged at all times.
Well, you know what they do now, the kids? They talk to text, so they record their voice and it turns into text, so we won't even be typing eventually.
I only found out the other day you can do that.
Yes, exactly. Right, Aaron is waiting very patiently for us with your news. Here he is.
I'm told patience is a virtue. Now, 11:33, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Good morning. The Conservatives are proposing an annual visa cap in an effort to reduce immigration. The plan would affect those coming to the UK to work or join family and would give Parliament a direct role in setting the levels of the cap, with MPs having a vote on the number. Net migration levels are now 3 times higher than they were in 2019. The Conservatives claim it will ensure immigration falls each year over the next Parliament. Home Secretary James Cleverly says it will help provide them with a balanced assessment of both the advantages and costs of migration. However, Labour says it's a rehash of failed announcements, with Sir Keir Starmer accusing the Tories of plucking numbers and hoping for the best. He says the government's lost control of net migration, adding it's more than twice as high as it was when we were in the EU, claiming Labour has a plan to bring it down without outlining one. He's expected to announce Labour's plans to set up a publicly owned green power company, GB Energy, on a visit to the northwest. The Liberal Democrats are promising free personal care for adults in need, including the elderly and disabled. Sir Ed Davey says he wants to pay carers an extra £2 an hour above the national living wage, and he says investment in the care sector will benefit the NHS. Sir Ed Davey, who's a carer for his disabled son, has described it as a deeply personal issue. He will later outline his party's belief that the provision of care should be based on need rather than ability to pay. And a ferry carrying D-Day veterans to France for the 80th anniversary commemorations has set sail from Portsmouth. The Mont Saint-Michel is being accompanied by Royal Navy patrol vessels, 3 of them, a mine hunter and a training ship with a tugboat as well. Quite a flotilla as it travels out of Portsmouth Harbour. US troops have been on a replica landing craft at Omaha Beach this morning. That's part of the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. Omaha, one of 2 beaches taken by US forces 80 years ago. More on that as we go through the afternoon, or you can get more right now by scanning the QR code for GB News Alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Quick look at the markets. The pound buys you $1.2751 and €1.1735. Gold will cost £1,829.76 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,211 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon, Emily and Tom with Good Afternoon Britain. What are you talking about this afternoon, guys?
What a 24 hours it's been.
Amazing.
Since we saw each other
Yes.
yesterday,
The entire race in this general election has been blown open. Forget any single opinion poll that was published yesterday, the day before, or over the weekend. Indeed, forget any opinion poll that we're going to see today or tomorrow as well, because the fieldwork for these things takes some time.
Yeah.
We're not going to see the effect of what happened yesterday for maybe until the end of this week and the beginning of next.
I predict
something has
the Sunday papers will have a big poll which will show the scale of the impact of Farage's intervention, which is pretty dramatic.
It is, and I think it's very hard to underestimate how this has really scared the roosters in the in the Conservative campaign. They've been studious about not mentioning migration. We can think of all of the different announcements that the Tories have made so far in this campaign. They've talked about national service. They've talked about
they made all sorts of different policy proposals. But yes, now they've come out straight with a cap on immigration. Funny that, isn't it? Nigel Farage wants this to be the immigration election. He's saying net zero immigration is the way to go. And then the Tories come up with a cap.
Yeah. Although he was tripped up this morning.
He was.
Mentioning net zero migration. He admitted that would mean 600,000 people could come in, as long as 600,000 people left, because that was the number who left last year. It must be said, a lot of the people who left are actually recent arrivals as well, so sometimes that can skew the figures a little bit.
Recent arrivals from where? Do we know where from?
I'm sure there is a breakdown. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there is
also a lot of aspirational Brits are leaving, unfortunately. A lot of ambitious Brits moving to, you know, places like
a lot of highly trained
Dubai and Australia.
Also a lot of highly trained junior doctors that we've paid a lot of money to train.
Yes, not very helpful, is it?
Anecdotally, my research often centres around Uber drivers. I like to know where they're from and how long they want to live here and where they would go then. And do you know what my very straw poll has been finding? A lot of people who are here from Afghanistan, Syria, Eritrea, they're going to the Kazakhstan area. They're going back to Kazakhstan, I know.
Because living conditions are better? Or
because living conditions are better.
Cheaper.
I'm not joking.
Energy's cheaper,
they're looking at some of these countries around that area and they're saying, we're sick of being here. I can't afford anything. I can't get on the property ladder. I'm going to Kazakhstan.
Do they have West End Theatre in Kazakhstan, do you think?
I
don't have a good theatre.
Andrew,
I'm not sure it'd be the.
I'm not sure you'd love it.
It's my place.
They've got a huge oil industry, though. They're an energy-producing country in a way that we've sort of stopped producing energy.
The money that's coming in.
That's another big fight today, a big battle over the old oil and gas industry. Labour have a lot to say on energy policy, but there seems to be a bit of a battle in Scotland over all this. Oh, well, we'll discuss that. We'll lay it all out.
But, of course, the big news is that the local candidacy of Nigel Farage is launching today. We'll be showing some of that, of course, in conjunction with all the other parties in our fair and balanced way.
Of course, always.
Right, all that from midday with Emily and Tom. For now, though, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually, and oh no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you. Even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
And I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you've got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side. And I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10:42 was Britain's Newsroom.
11:42.
Why do I keep getting the time? It's 11:42.
Want to be here longer with me, I know.
11:42 with GB News. Britain's Newsroom, GB News, Andrew Pierce and Bev Turner. And, of course, it is nearly D-Day.
That's right. And quite rightly, we often think of the men who fought on the Normandy beaches, and quite right too. We think of D-Day, but there were also hundreds and thousands of women crucial to the success of Operation Overlord.
And some of these women were recruited by the government and worked day and night to decode secret German messages.
Historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop paid a visit to one of these code breakers.
Operation Overlord, the unprecedented Allied campaign to liberate Western Europe and defeat the Nazis, has long been immortalised in films, books and documentaries. Much less well known is the crucial role hundreds of thousands of women from all walks of life played in D-Day. They occupied numerous vital roles, including at Bletchley Park, where the majority of recruits were female, working around the clock to deliver ultra-intelligence on enemy movements in France for the Allies. Among their number was Ruth Bourne. Nowadays she's 98, but then she was a young wren fighting the same war as the men on the beaches. Ruth operated one of Alan Turing's bomb machines that helped decrypt Enigma-encoded communications.
We were initially told the work we were doing was specialised. It was to be quite hard work.
So you are at the coalface of the decryption with the bomb machine, but once this ultra-rich material is being harvested, you then have to translate it differently from the original German.
You have to rewrite it.
Yeah, so the Germans don't know that you've been reading their hand.
Yeah. Like the good old-fashioned précis that we used to do at school.
Could you explain what it was like to first meet a bomb and what those bombs did?
Well, we met the bomb. It was a little bit surprising. It was very tall. I think it was 7 feet high, 6 foot wide, about 2 foot deep. And it made a chugging noise as the wheels, all these wheels were going round and round.
Do you have any idea of the bigger picture of what you're doing?
Absolutely not. It was another job where women went and operated the machinery while the men went to war.
For many, many years, you weren't aware of the impact of what you were doing, and I find that really interesting.
It was only after 30 years when the security blanket was lifted and the first book came out, I read the importance of the Enigma secret.
It takes a long time, not just for women's war effort to be recognised, but more specifically, the secret work that women did. Ruth didn't get a Bletchley Park medal until the late 1990s, and then the pièce de résistance, her Légion d'honneur in 2019, aged 94.
Now I know how important the work was. My life would have been completely different if it hadn't been for not just doing something in the war. Didn't make my life different. But when it all came out, the importance of what we'd done, I was very privileged to have been chosen. I know. I'm very privileged. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for sharing.
The modesty, the privilege for her to be part of that extraordinary operation, because cracking the Enigma code definitely speeded up the end of the war. It stopped the U-boats, taking out all our merchant shipping, extraordinary. And there she says it was a privilege for her to be part of it. I think it was a privilege for us to hear her.
Wasn't it? Written with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
Now, up next, we are being warned about ticket fraud and scams online. We'll have some tips to stop you being a victim of that. It's too easy to be fooled. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to turn a little bit colder from the north today as a band of rain and cloud will push southeastwards. That's a cold front that's sinking southeastwards through the day. Behind it, we've got a dive of much colder air coming in from the north, so there will be a different feel to the weather by this afternoon across parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. So it will turn a bit brighter as the rain and cloud does move through, but there's a risk of some quite blustery showers as well, and quite a brisk breeze. That rain will push into parts of Wales, northern England, perhaps as far south as the southwest through this afternoon. I think most of us will just see quite a lot of cloud around. Ahead of that band, still some brightness, potentially highs of around 21, 22 degrees in the south and east, but most of us are going to notice a bit of a downturn in the temperatures. Some of those showers across the highest ground of Scotland could fall as snow because it is cold enough. It's fairly unusual for this time of year. As I said, it will turn a bit brighter once that rain and cloud does clear through across parts of Northern England, Northern Ireland to end the day, and it will reside across parts of central England into the southwest and southeast by this evening. So I think despite the sunshine in this afternoon across the southeast, the cloud and rain will arrive later on today. That will push south and eastwards through the night, and behind it will turn much clearer, so quite a clear and fairly cold night to come, much colder than it has been lately. You can see temperatures dipping down into the low single figures rurally. There is a risk of a touch of grass frost locally across some places. Showers will still continue across the far northwest, across parts of Scotland, but most of us should stay dry into tomorrow morning with the best of the sunshine across southern and eastern areas. Bit of cloud will bubble up into the afternoon and showers will develop across parts of Wales, northern England, but they're going to be most frequent across parts of Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland in particular, where there is a further risk of some hill snow. And for all of us, it's going to be feeling cooler with temperatures a little below average.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:50, so music and sports fans could be in for a cruel summer as the threat of ticket scams rises with Taylor Swift and the Euros the biggest targets.
Do you know I won't be buying tickets for either?
You may not be in the sweet spot of this story, but anyway. More than 1 in 3 people have bought an event ticket which turned out to be fake or know someone that has.
That's so depressing, isn't it? Well, join us now to help us through this minefield is fraud expert Jim Winters. Jim, how easy is it to be gullible and to get caught? And what are the signs we should look out for, Jim?
Well, fraud's the most common type of crime in the UK at the moment, and we're moving into the summer. Lots of big sporting events coming up, lots of big touring artists and festivals, so it's kind of rich picking for fraudsters, so it's incredibly easy to become a victim. We've noticed an increase nationwide in purchase scams, which prompted the research we did that shows, as you said, shockingly, 1 in 3 young people either know somebody who's been a victim of a ticketing scam or been a victim themselves.
And that's because a website will look genuine, Jim, is it? Like, so you'd get Ticketmaster, you'd get ATG, these big sites which work on behalf of a venue and they sell the tickets. So you go onto a website, you think it's genuine, you put in your card details, you give them your money, and it turns out to be a scam site. Is that how it works?
That's one of the ways that it works, but unfortunately there are so many different ways of buying tickets these days. That also gives the fraudsters lots of different avenues to explore. So fake websites is a big problem. Our research at Nationwide also showed that unsolicited emails are a big problem. About 20% of the people we spoke to who'd been victims had received an email out of the blue and responded to that. We've seen unsolicited messages on social media, and of course fake websites. Make sure when you're buying that you're using an official retailer. You can look for the STAR affiliation, which is the Society of Ticket Agents and Retailers. That will give you the reassurance that you're dealing with an official retailer. But there are other things you can do to keep yourself safe as well. So we'd ask people to always use their credit or debit card. You get much better consumer protection. Don't ever buy a ticket using a bank transfer. And really look out for tickets for events that you know have been sold out or events where the tickets haven't yet been released. Those are red flags as well.
And will the ticket prices on these scam sites often be unrealistically cheap, say, for a Taylor Swift concert, or do they push the prices up?
They can be. That old adage that if it looks too good to be true, it always is very appropriate when it comes to scams, all types of scams, whether that's an investment scam or a purchase scam like one of these ticketing frauds that we see. But tickets are expensive. So the impact can be quite significant financially. The Nationwide research revealed that the average loss is about £400, which is a huge amount of money. But the impact, of course, isn't just financial, it's emotional as well. Being the victim of a scam can be tremendously damaging to your well-being. And the disappointment, imagine you thought you got tickets for Taylor Swift, only to find out it was a scam. It has a terrible impact on people.
Do we have any idea, Jim, we're against the clock, but are these people who are running these sites often UK-based or overseas?
No, unfortunately, that's the nature of the internet, that they can be based all over the place, which is why getting hold of these people and stopping them is incredibly difficult. So Nationwide looking for better collaboration between all of the players in what we call the scam ecosystem. So that's social media sites, big tech, like firms like Google, even the telecoms industry. The best way to kind of combat these criminals is to work together.
Sure. OK, thank you so much. Fraud expert Jim Winters there. Join us again, Jim. That was really interesting. We barely scratched the surface of that topic. Right, Emily and Tom are here with Good Afternoon Britain. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30.
See you then.
Has this general election been blown wide open, or has it turned into a race for second place? Well, Nigel Farage is launching his candidacy today.
And something that hasn't been talked about enough is the battle brewing over Labour's energy plans. Looks like they want to make it even more expensive for oil and gas suppliers, more windfall taxes. How will that impact the industry, and how are businesses reacting? All of that after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be a fairly blustery day across northwestern areas. Some more sunshine to come for these areas, but this morning the best of the sunshine is across the far southeast. Now it will cloud over here later on in the day, but it's still fairly mild out there. Elsewhere, further north and west, it's turning much colder through the day. That's as this band of cloud and rain moves away from the northwest, sinking into parts of Wales, northern England, into central parts by the middle of this afternoon as well. We could see some heavy bursts of rain in here. Now to the north of here, we've got colder air, but some sunshine and some blustery showers moving in by this afternoon. Highs of around 14 or 15 degrees in the north, closer to 20 degrees in the south and east. Now through the rest of the afternoon, that band of cloud and rain will continue to sink southwards, so it will will be a fairly bright end to the day across eastern areas of Scotland, but across the northwest, that's where we've got these most frequent showers. And you can see there is some evidence of snow falling over the high ground. That's above around 800 metres in Scotland. It'll be a fairly dry end to the day across northwestern England, parts of North Wales as well, but across central parts of England and southern areas of England as well, a pretty cloudy and possibly quite a damp end to the day. Now that cloud and rain will continue its journey south and eastwards throughout tonight, so it will turn much clearer once that cloud and rain pushes away to the south and east, but it is going to turn much colder through this evening, as behind that cloud and rain we are into much colder air. So temperatures will widely dip down into the lower single figures, rurally into the mid-single figures for many towns and cities. But it will be a fairly bright start to the day on Wednesday, particularly if you are further south and east. Actually towards the north and west it's going to be another blustery day with frequent, possibly heavy, possibly thundery showers. And again, there's a risk of some snow falling through Wednesday morning over the high ground of Scotland, above around 600 metres, which is fairly unusual for the time of year. And it's going to be a fresher day wherever you are, with temperatures struggling to get into the high teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's